Okay, so with my story, I think I'm just going to try and start from the beginning. My story is pretty much one of faking it right from the get-go. Right from when I can remember not really feeling like I was fitting into my own skin. I always felt inadequate, I always felt embarrassed. I didn't feel like I quite fit in with anybody else around me. I never had any reason to believe that, but it was just always the way I felt. From small, I figured out that I could lie to get myself out of trouble, I could lie to get myself friends, and more importantly, I could lie to get myself out of trouble at home. I was always encouraged, to be honest, I was always encouraged to kind of be true to who I was and what my passions were and what I wanted to do. But truth be told, I had no idea what any of those were. I spent my time looking at everybody else and wanting to be like everybody else. I was fairly naturally gifted at sport, but I was also quite gifted in terms of culture. And going to school that didn't quite fit with the boys at school, so I got ridiculed from quite young. And I also figured out there that if I kind of played the game and wasn't rigorously honest with people as to who I really was, I could fit in with just about everybody. I could fit in with the so-called nerdy kids at school, I could fit in with the jocks or the sporty guys, and I could fit in with the girls and dancing. So my life was always a mix of changing my personality to fit in with that group, and then changing to fit in with that group. And I never really wanted to figure out who I was. I thought everybody was actually doing exactly what I was doing. And going through and into high school was very much the same thing. And I was very fortunate, playing first team sport. I got to experience a lot of amazing things there. I got to travel to go and do my dancing, and I was also fortunate enough to represent South Africa in 2012 at Sun City, which was an amazing experience. But all along, I never told anyone that I had this, hole in my chest, like I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. And behind closed doors, I was miserable, I was hateful, I was angry, I was bitter. I didn't feel like I had any friends, but on the outside, I always showed that I had everything together. I always showed that I could be there for everybody, I could be everyone's friend, and that nothing ever bothered me. And it was 2013, when I was 19 years old, I went through quite a severe hijacking attempt, where I had the hijacker in my car with me for about 2.5 hours. And I was fortunate enough to get away from that incident, and I could manage to keep my car, but a switch flicked in my brain where I now had to try and pretend like that didn't affect me. I now had to try and pretend that it was okay, and that I could just carry on with life, and that's what men are supposed to do. We're not supposed to be bothered by things, and at the end of the day, I got away, so there was nothing to really bitch about, if I could say that. But during this time, what I had developed was an unfortunate drinking habit, where I would drink in excess when I went out, because it was the only time where I stopped caring what other people thought. I could behave like I thought other people wanted me to behave. The nervousness, the worry, the anxiety, all of that disappeared. And it was where I could just find a little bit of relief. And I can remember people from early on, coming to me and telling me, Mitch, you've got a bit of a drinking problem. You drink too much, you go too far. And I always just pushed it aside, I always just played it off. I was like, well, I'm young, I'm supposed to be doing this, I'm supposed to be behaving like a bit of an idiot. But not quite to the extremes that I was doing it. And the consequences for me started to get worse and worse. I started getting more fights. I've had my nose broken 6 times, I've had ribs cracked, I've had bones in my hands not be as they should. And all during this time, I was just pretending that everything was perfectly fine. During that time, from about 18 to about 22, I could keep employment, and I was working for different schools. I was a sports coach at the time, while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And the truth is, I had absolutely no idea. I kept trying to, excuse my French, but I kept bullshitting people that I knew exactly where I was going, what I was doing. I had this rock solid plan. My parents couldn't tell me anything because, my generation is different and nobody understands, and I've got my kind of plan together, but I had no clue. And unfortunately during this time I'd also met a few girls I'd got into relationships with. And unfortunately I wasn't the same person in those relationships. You know, I would always shift and change my personality to try and be the person they wanted me to be, and secretly get resentful about it. And I think one of the best examples of me faking it is I've always been big into the gym. I've always been passionate about the gym. But unfortunately, when you drink in excess all the time, your hangovers get pretty bad. So the only way I could get to the gym was by putting a bottle of vodka in my protein shake bottle, 2 scoops of pre-workout, and head off to the gym. And I honestly thought nobody knew. I thought it was perfectly acceptable. I thought it was perfectly fine. Everyone must have thought I was leaving the gym walking a bit skew and cock out from leg day. It was actually just because I couldn't see. And I did this for months. You know, I did this for a long time. And I had friends try and step in and intervene, and all this time I just kept playing it off like, I'll stop when I want to, everything's fine, I know what I'm doing. And again, behind closed doors, I had no idea what I was doing. You know, I wanted to stop so many times, and I found I couldn't stop. But I was also so arrogant and had such a massive ego that I couldn't go and ask for help. You know, I'm a young guy, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, and I just have absolutely no clue. And fast forward a bit of time, and you know, things get worse. I got arrested for a DUI, which is always a fun experience. I don't know if anyone's had that. It's not fun, especially spending a night in Wellvale Police Station. It's not a good time. I wouldn't advise it for anybody. And all throughout this, you know, I really did believe that at some point I was going to figure it out. At some point I was going to stop the madness. And I also believe that a lot of people my age were going through this same phase, when all my peers were actually getting better and I was just getting worse. You know, I've been given the best opportunities by my parents. I went to a private school, went to varsity, and I was just completely destroying all those opportunities. And eventually, things got to a point where I unfortunately had fallen asleep behind the wheel. I was off my face, and I plowed into the back of a car just outside William Nicol at 140. And somehow I got out of that car without a scratch. The only thing I was concerned about was getting up, making sure I could take my bottle of vodka with me. And at that time, because my life was just heading downhill, it was just like, okay, well, this is just now the next thing. And I honestly blamed everybody else and everything else. Never once did I look inwards and go, this is my doing. You know, for me, life was just a shit sandwich, and every day I was choosing to take a bite. You know, every day I was getting involved in the same old story, and still wouldn't acknowledge to people that I had a problem and that I wanted help. And towards the end of that mad chapter of my life, I can remember whenever I was drunk, I wanted to be sober. Whenever I was sober, I wanted to be drunk. There was no happiness in any which way I was going about it. And at 23 years old, I was told by a doctor that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing, I'd be dead before I'm 28. And to be honest, I thought he was talking the biggest load of shit I'd ever heard. Because I was 23 and bulletproof. You don't know what you're talking about. And, you know, I got to a point where I'd written the car off. Friends wanted nothing to do with me. Girlfriends had left. And eventually my parents wisened up and they kicked me out of the house. And I think that evening out in the streets, I realized a couple of things. That A, I'm not built for the streets. I'm quite happy to get in a bit of a rough and tumble and get in a fight. I want to go home to a warm bed and a cooked meal, please. I'm not built for the streets. And second, I was screwed. There was no more story. There was no more wiggle room. There was no more one more chance. I was finished. It was over. And I was given an opportunity. I had two choices. Go to the street, which we've already figured out I wasn't built for. And the second one was to go to treatment. And I'm very glad to say that the day I stepped into that treatment centre was the end of my faking it chapter of my life. Thank you. In that treatment centre, I figured out that I've got a disease, that my brain and my body don't react like everybody else's does when I touch alcohol. When I touch alcohol, it means I'm going to have 100,000 more, or until at least I fall flat on my back with my eyes closed. And when I open my eyes, I'm going to do it again. So for me, the only thing I can do is not touch that first one. Because once I have the first one, I don't have the choice whether I'm going to have the second, third, or fourth. That is already going to happen. And I also needed to figure out who I am and what I am at my core. I need to get in touch with my values, my morals, my principles, because all throughout my active addiction those have disappeared. I figured out that telling the truth was the only way to go about, and I couldn't hide behind manipulation, dishonesty, and blame anymore. If I wanted my life to change, I had to change my life. And look, my road to recovery didn't start off easy. My folks luckily gave me the opportunity to stay the full 3 months in treatment, and then I got the opportunity to go to a halfway house, which I had to pay the rent, I had to get a job, I had to do all of those things, and I had to start from ground zero. I didn't even have a bank account open because I was too irresponsible with money. I'd obviously written the car off, so there was none of that. So I had to learn how to use the good old Shoelace Express to get around, which is very nice for your entitlement. It makes you remove it completely. But during that time, I got to figure out what makes me tick, what makes me feel good about life. And for the first time in my life, having absolutely nothing, I felt the best that I've ever felt. I found friends around me that I could be in touch with. I could be honest with my folks, and I could actually get to know them, who they actually were, not who I perceived them to be. And I got to realize that who I am deep down actually isn't a terrible individual. I can be a bit of an a-hole from time to time, but I'm not all bad all the time. And I do have things that I can offer to people, and I can be useful. And it reignited my passion for the gym, just to do it the healthy way this time and without the vodka and the pre-workout. And I got involved in the gym, and I really enjoyed that for a period of time. But my calling was to go and help people like me, people who are suffering from the disease of addiction and alcoholism, and also don't know that there is a solution out there. And to also help families understand that it's not their creation and it's not their doing. And I went to go work at a place out in Mpumalanga, and that was a complete nightmare. But I learned a hell of a lot from that experience. And with that, and my folks, we decided the only way to do this, the way we know how to do it from the grassroots up, is to start our own place, which is what we did just over 3 years ago. I managed to convince my parents to pack up at that time, I think it was 6 dogs, there's 9 now. It's ridiculous. To pack up the dogs, leave their life behind in Joburg, and come down in two carloads full, and just start this new adventure. And it's been exceptionally rewarding. I've watched my pops have a purpose again in his life. I've watched my mom really get a spark, being able to help families and being able to help individuals put their lives together, put their families back together. And I get to speak to and try and help counsel people who are exactly like me. And it's not the fluffy approach. I'm very much straightforward and direct, no bullshit. Because unfortunately, people like me, we don't listen to frothy emotional appeal. We listen to straightforward, direct, and what is the honest truth. And I'm very grateful to have been able to help some of those individuals. Some of them are here tonight. And it's exceptionally rewarding for me to see people get better and to see their lives get put back together. And it makes me feel better that I can turn what was such a bad time in my life into something positive. And I hope that I can continue influencing people in a positive way, because I spent a very long time hurting people and influencing people in the most negative way possible. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity of letting me come up and speak this evening. It's been a great privilege to come and do this, and hopefully I'll be able to help a lot of people in this community, because I know there was no rehab facility out this way. So I'm hoping we can help a lot of people out here in the time going forward. So yeah, that's it.